Welcome to Recharge with Richardson. 5 minutes of hope and inspiration every Monday and Thursday. And now, here is today's episode. Well, welcome to another Monday morning episode of Recharge with Richardson. Last time, we began talking about our environment, which is the space around us in which we live and work and just kind of experience life. And we talked about how important that was to our well-being. And by the way, speaking of environment, if you live in Texas, you've just made it through an unprecedented week of crisis as winter weather sent temperatures plunging below zero in many places, caused our power grid to fail, and then froze and burst water lines all over the place, leading to a water shortage, not only power shortage, but water shortage for 14 million people, many of whom are under boil water watches. And it's just been crazy, honestly. And my heart and my prayers truly go out to all who have suffered through this and are still suffering as they wait for their power and their water to be restored. So that's what's kind of gone on in our physical environment over the last week here in Texas. But today, I want to think from scripture with you about, just about a different part of our environment, our social environment. It's one that we all know intellectually about, but it's not one that we really give much thought to or as much follow through or put as much importance on as sometimes we really ought to. And why is that? Well, I think a piece of that might be that in our desire to be accepted by people, to be popular, we tend to kind of maybe overlook this part of our environment, or maybe hope that it's really not as important as it is. But listen to what God says in Proverbs 22, verses 24 and 25. He says this: "Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go." Why? "Lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul." Isn't that interesting? In my last episode with you, I pointed out that our spiritual environment impacts our salvation and that we need to gather for spiritual encouragement and spiritual power. Today, here's my thought for you. Our social environment, just like our spiritual environment impacts our salvation, our social environment impacts our success. Proverbs just told us, don't, hang out, don't go, don't be with an angry man, lest you learn his ways, or a furious man, don't go with him. So what's the principle being taught here? The principle is this, you know, that who you hang out with is going to rub off on you. And so what I want us to understand is that a large part of how your life or my life turns out, whether we're happy, whether we live abundantly, or whether we're discouraged or constantly struggling, a large part of that hinges on putting into practice what we just read in Proverbs here. Don't hang out with a hot-tempered person. Why? Because you will become like him and destroy yourself. In other words, what's the Bible telling us? He or she is going to rub off on you or me. And really, I want you to understand, it often happens unconsciously. I think back to when I was a teenager and I got a job and I was working in an environment where there were, a lot of men around me, and they were kind of rough, and their language demonstrated it, and they cursed a lot. And here I'm a Christian young person, and I've never cursed in my life, and I didn't intend to. But after being in that environment, listening to these guys cursing all the time, all of a sudden one day something happened, and what do you suppose came flying out of my mouth? A curse, and a curse word. And I was like, wow, where'd that come from? You see, my environment, my social environment rubbed off on me unconsciously. it affected me and it went into my brain and it impacted my actions. And so I want you to understand that these things happen unconsciously. And it's not just about an angry person. That principle applies. It could be said about a dishonest person. Hang out with a dishonored person, a dishonest person, it's gonna rub off on you. Hang out with a gossip or an immoral person or a lazy person or a manipulative person, it's gonna rub off on you. Conversely, hang out with a positive person, hang out with a successful person, hang out with a kind person. It's going to rub off on you. The lesson that God is teaching us here, what is it? Simply that we become like the people we associate with. They rub off on us. There's no doubt about it. Peer pressure is huge. It's whether it's any part of our life, whether it's elementary school, whether it's high school, college, adult life, work, whatever. Watch out. Your social environment is shaping you. Proverbs 13:20 says this, he who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Once again, God is sending us a clear message. Who you hang out with rubs off on you. If you hang out with positive people, successful people, wise people, you will become like that. If you hang out with negative people and people whose lives are falling apart because of bad choices, unsuccessful people, unfortunately, you're going to become like that. It's going to weigh your life down. So here's the lesson. Our circle of friends determines our destiny. I'm going to say that again. Our circle of friends determines our destiny. Solomon is saying this issue of our social environment is literally so important that our life destiny and even our eternal destiny could be at stake by what we do with it. Dave Ramsey, who's kind of known as America's Christian finance guru, talks about how he went bankrupt and then decided that he needed to figure out the secret of being wealthy. And so he started spending time with rich people and hanging out with rich people and asking them questions and listening to them and learning from them and just being around them. And that changed his trajectory. And now, as you know, he's an extremely wealthy, successful entrepreneur, business leader, and educator in America. And in his classes on finance, he teaches you and me, regular people, hang out with rich people, find out what they do what rich people do rich people stuff, and you will become rich true. It's not magic. It's just a principle of life. Who's rubbing off on you? And so to everyone of all ages, I appeal to you. Be so very careful about your associations, who you hang out with. At school, at work, or anywhere else in your life, don't crave popularity and acceptance so much that you are willing to overlook drug use and swearing and alcohol and smoking and cheating and sexual promiscuity just to be liked, just to be in. You and I will live with irreversible regrets, doors closed forever to a future that could have been ours. And so instead, choose to hang out with great role models, people who have been successful. If you want to be a doctor and they're a great doctor, hang out with them, find out associate with a wise man, because God says, keep in the forefront of your mind that God says that if you walk with a wise man, you will be wise. And remember, God's got this, and God's got you. Thank you for joining us for Recharge with Richardson. Don't forget to join us for our next episode, and until then, may God fill you with joy and peace and hope.